Welcome to Motoroids, guys. My name is Amit, and after a really long, very pleasurable day of riding the beautiful Triumph Trident, when we decided that we wanted to talk about it, it started raining. It turned ominous, and I wouldn't have been standing here had it still been thundering and raining, because it turned so scary that we really had to take shelter. But thankfully, the rain gods have finally relented, and we have some light. And after a joyous ride on the Triumph Trident, I can share my experience with you. And to start off, I have to say that I am delighted and surprised, really amazed with this little but very powerful machine. Seldom do you come across such machines which suit our conditions so well, except for maybe a few things which are not a deal breaker. But I am really impressed with the Triumph Trident for a variety of reasons, and today I'm going to share all of my experiences with you. Now, to start off, this is the most economical Triumph that you can buy in India, and not just the most economical Triumph, it's one of the most economical thoroughbred middleweights that you can buy in India or maybe anywhere else in the world. There is an increasing number of youngsters as well as some seasoned riders who want a better experience, a more powerful motorcycle, and that trend can be seen in the four-wheeler market also, where the appetite for a more expensive, more premium vehicle is increasing, and such is the case with the two-wheeler market also, where more expensive, more powerful motorcycles which reflect your personality, which reflect your status, is there for the uptake increasingly. In that context, I really believe that this motorcycle is very, very important, because it offers a tremendous package. Now, to start off, this is a ground up kind of an effort from Triumph, and that engine, although not entirely new, has been thoroughly reworked. It has its origins in the Daytona 675, from where this block has been taken, but it's been completely reworked, and a lot of change has been done there. The capacity has also been reduced, the stroke has been slightly reduced, and a lot of internals have also been changed to change the character of this vehicle. It's mellower, it has more torque lower down the range, and it is probably one of the most tractable motorcycles that I have ever come across. And I'll talk about the performance later, but I wanted to share this with you, that this motorcycle can pull from 30 kilometers per hour in the 6th gear without any splutter, without any noticeable knocking, which makes it tremendously usable for our traffic ridden conditions. In that sense, I loved how friendly and how usable this motorcycle is, and how it can change its character when you want it to. It really can deliver the performance also on our streets when it's desired of it. Now, this motorcycle can also be considered as a downscaled version of the Street Triple, and the Street Triple S that is sold in some markets where you have some regulation for capacity and power for riding licenses. There the power output on the 660 is reduced to comply with the license norms, and when de-restricted, the power is increased. However, here on this motorcycle, this engine, the 3-cylinder triple on this engine, it's a 4-valve unit, and it produces 81 PS of peak power at 10,250 RPM, and the peak torque here is 64 Newton meters, which is produced at 6,250 RPM. The top speed of this motorcycle is in excess of 200 kilometers per hour if you find a long enough straight. Now, as I mentioned, the real beauty of this power delivery is about how early it kicks in. The torque is available right from the bottom of the rev range. The engine is beautifully linear, and although there is of course a very strong power delivery that starts from 3000 RPM, and there's a kick up after 7000 RPM, but it will just rush all the way to the tacho marking on the instrument console, which is up to 11,000 RPM, and you will not find any sharp spikes throughout the rev range. At about 3,500 RPM, you can feel that the power is kicking in, but that's fine. Below 3,000 RPM also, the power delivery is just fine. The motor keeps on moving, unlike a lot of other similar motorcycles where they start sputtering and come to a halt. This motorcycle just keeps pottering around without a word of complaint. So in that sense, it's extremely forgiving and extremely usable in our conditions. A word about something that a lot of you want to know about is the heating issues in motorcycles. And on a hot day, if you're riding it for say half an hour, 45 minutes in stop-start traffic, you are going to start feeling some heat, especially on the left hand side first and then on the right hand side. It's not unbearable, but it can get a little bit troublesome if you're going to be riding for over an hour in stop-start conditions. Once it catches speed though, there is no problem. Although in hot conditions where you're riding through stop-start traffic, there is going to be some heat which you're going to be feeling around your ankles and on your calves. In terms of vibration, the Trident is completely vibe free and is smooth all the way to the top limit of its rev range. Now, another thing that you really would appreciate about this motorcycle is how compact it is. It's really like a lot of stuff has been jammed together here, and that really completes the beautiful street fighter look of this motorcycle. And I really love how compact and how easy to manage this motorcycle is. The weight of this motorcycle is 189 kgs curb, and it's lesser than all the other motorcycles in the segment, be it the Kawasaki Z650 or the Honda CB650R or even Triumph's own Street Twin. It's a lightweight motorcycle and it is very easily manageable. The seat height is 805 mm, and myself being 5 feet 10 inches, I can easily put my heels on the ground with a slight bend in my knees, and that really means that if you are 5 feet 5 or 5 feet 6, you should not have any problem whatsoever in handling this motorcycle. One word about the maneuverability though, this motorcycle has the steering lock coming in rather quickly. So when you're trying to maneuver it in tight spaces, you really have to go forward and come backward quite a few times. So that's something that you need to be mindful of. I really love these mirrors from a touring perspective, from a long distance riding perspective. I really believe that these are very practical, very wide and very usable. And they tow for the headlight, which is very powerful and looks quite stunning too. It is an AHO unit and it has this Triumph logo in the middle. It really looks very compact and very beautiful. And since we are talking about the front of this motorcycle, let's also talk about these tires. The 120 section front and the 180 section rear Road 5 tires from Michelin are spectacular. And I'm probably one of the few guys who have ridden it in pouring rain all day long today, and it really performed very well in terms of control. Of course, the rain mode, which is a part of the traction control, the riding mode is fantastic. And not just are the tires fantastic, even the brakes are fantastic. These 310 mm Nissan caliper brakes, twin discs with twin pot calipers are amazing, and the 41 mm upside down show off forks are fantastic too. There is a bit of dive under hard braking, but I think for this kind of an application they are perfectly fine. This motorcycle is not meant for track use, this is meant for road use, and in that sense they ensure that there is sufficient amount of comfort. Although a word about the rear suspension. The rear suspension is a monoshock unit which is adjustable for preload, 7 steps, and at this point in time it is at its softest, and even at that setting I can say that it is slightly on the firmer side. It's not uncomfortable by any measure, but you'll really have to put it at the softest setting if you really want it to be very comfortable. The moment you start dialing it up a little bit, it gets firmer and firmer. So if you're going to be preferring comfort, I really think that you'll have to put this motorcycle at its softest setting. Now the ground clearance here is not all that much, and while the number has not been specified, I can tell you that over the bigger bumps this motorcycle has a tendency of scraping its belly, and that's one of my biggest gripes, along with the slight heat that emanates from the engine. These are really the two biggest gripes I have. Apart from that, I really don't have any complaints with this motorcycle, and I wanted to get done with that as early as possible. So that's something that probably could have been dealt with a little bit better for our conditions. The exhaust here sounds amazing, and it's one of the most beautiful sounding motorcycles in this segment, and the Triumphs with their legendary triples have always sounded amazing, and this motorcycle is no different. Let's have a listen. You gotta love the way this thing sounds, and also the way this thing performs. Now this is not a manic machine like the street triple or the speed triple motorcycles, which have more of a peaky performance, where the meat of the performance comes in only after you cross a certain threshold on the rev band. This motorcycle has usable torquey performance throughout the rev band, and no matter what conditions you're riding it in, whether you're riding it within the city or you're riding it gingerly on the highway, or you really want to be going corner carving, there's always sufficient amount of power and torque available. And while the engine has been tuned to deliver a lot of its power lower down the rev range, it's not overly peaky. The other part of the equation is that the gearing on this motorcycle for the first 4 gears is on the shorter side. So even if you are a gear higher, say on a 3rd gear corner you are in the 4th gear, you will not find a dearth of power. The motorcycle will still have enough power and torque to pull you through. Overtaking acceleration is fantastic, and 5th and 6th gears are kind of overdrive, where you can really extract the maximum fuel efficiency from this machine on the highway if you so wish. And which brings us to another brilliant aspect of this motorcycle, which is the fuel efficiency. Even in the city you are going to easily get 18-19 kmpl, and on an open highway where you are not much in a rush, you can even get 25 kmpl on this motorcycle. So the fuel efficiency on this motorcycle is pretty good, and you don't need to bother about it. With its 14-liter fuel tank, you're going to get a range of 300 kilometers or thereabouts. Now, talking about the tank, this recess here with the Trident branding is beautifully done, and my knees fit in just about perfectly here, especially if you're leaned in. This really helps get some grip on the tank. Now, since we are talking about the tank, let's also talk about the ergonomics. And the foot peg, as you can see, is slightly rear set. The handlebar is really wide, and you have a mildly crouched position. You don't exactly sit on the bike. It's somewhere in the middle of in and on the motorcycle. Like a few other Street Fighter motorcycles where you're overly on top, such is not the case. You are reasonably behind the instrument console and the handlebar. The tank is tapered and long. The seat is also pretty narrow, which also helps accessibility for short riders. This recess here really works very well for riders who are up to my height. Myself being 5 feet 10 inch, my knee fits just fine here. However, if you are going to be 6 feet tall or 5'11", maybe your knee is going to jut out, and that may be a bit of a problem for the taller riders amongst you. This part here also offers grip if you are leaned over to get some traction. And the fuel tank here is a hinged unit and appears so. This is what the key looks like, and I really wish that the key had some more premium feel to it. Now let's have a look at the instrument console, and as you can see, on top you have tachometer along with the fuel gauge, a gear indicator and speedo. And at the bottom you have this TFT screen. It's a color TFT display unit, and it's very intuitive, and the controls are positioned on the left hand here, and you have these direction controls. This is to get inside a menu, and this little M button that you see here is to choose the 2 modes which are a function of traction control. So these 2 riding modes here are road and rain, and while riding in dry conditions you are going to be using road mode. In rainy conditions like what we face today, you are going to be using the rain mode, and at any point in time the motorcycle detects even the slightest hint of a slip, the traction control light starts coming on and the power is cut. It is a little bit more intrusive than some other such systems that I have seen, but you also have to understand that this motorcycle is going to be coming in at probably the lowest price tag, and at that price point a manufacturer has to be careful about the kind of rider who's going to be riding this motorcycle. And if you're going to be graduating from a 250cc or a 350cc motorcycle, there is a significant differential in terms of power, and that has to be taken into account. So yes, this can be a little bit intrusive for the seasoned riders amongst us, but I really believe that it's better being safe than sorry. Now let's have a look at the various different screens that we have here. And since this is showing us the service interval, screen which tells you when the next service is due. I should also tell you that this motorcycle comes with one of the longest service intervals of 16,000 kilometers, and you don't need to get it serviced too much, and that's one of the areas where it aces its Japanese rivals. You're going to be happy getting it serviced once a year, and that would be it. 9 to 12,000 rupees, and that's all the money that you're going to be sparing on the service of this motorcycle. So very easy to maintain as well. There are a bunch of telltale lights, the ABS light, the neutral light, the engine malfunction, and the oil temperature. And apart from that, you have this brightness control. Although there is absolutely no problem at all, even on the brightest days you can read this display very easily. So in that sense, it's very well done. This is the gear indicator. Then you can get into the main menu by pressing this tick button here. So for example, in riding modes, you can go to the rain mode and customize it to your liking. And in that sense, this motorcycle gives you some control over what you want within the modes as well. And you have various different options, and you also have Bluetooth, so you can receive calls, you can listen to music, and you also have turn by turn navigation. So all of those features are right there. Then you also have the trip and the fuel stats, which gives you the average fuel efficiency and distance to dry, and also you have the engine temperature. Now the handlebar here is quite wide, and you have these bar and weights, and as I see it, this is one of the widest bars that I have seen. You also have this span adjuster for the front brake. The clutch action is slightly on the heavier side for me, although this motorcycle comes with a slip and assist clutch, which means that the effort should not be too much. And I'm not saying that it's bothersome, but it's not as light as I've seen on a few other motorcycles, and it probably could have been a little bit lighter. It's not going to bother you much, but it is not the lightest clutches that I've seen. Another great feature that the Trident has, that it comes with ride-by-wire, so the throttle response is really crisp and everything is electronically controlled. The Trident comes with bi-directional quick shifter as an optional accessory. The horn sounds so. You have a hazard button here, and you also have engine kill, which is integrated with the electric starter. Now the seat, as I mentioned, is tapered towards the front and is very well cushioned. It's a very nice and comfortable seat. The pillion seat isn't wide and big enough, and it's not long enough. So clearly this motorcycle is not meant to be ridden with a pillion for long distances. A pillion sitting here on a smooth road would probably last 50 to 70 kilometers. Within the city, he may last about 20 kilometers, but definitely this is not a seat which is meant for long distances with a pillion. Although I really love the grab rail, it's very functional and it's very trendy. In fact, it's the rear of this motorcycle which looks really lean, really sexy, and really beautiful. The tail lamp here is also quite minimalistic, and I really love what Triumph have done with the Trident's rear styling. The blinkers are LEDs both up front and at the rear, which means that the lighting setup on this motorcycle all around is LED. And on our test motorcycle, I also see this Triumph branded tank pad which protects the motorcycle from scratches. Now in terms of its chassis, its handling and its behavior on the road when you are leaned over or when you are riding on a straight highway, the Triumph motorcycles have always been known to behave beautifully well, and this motorcycle is no different. It shares a lot of its bits with the Street Triple S, although for reducing the costs, parts like this frame here is steel here instead of being aluminum. However, it has a longer wheelbase, and this motorcycle feels beautiful, be it on the straights or when you are leaned over. Now one thing is very clear, this motorcycle is not a super sport, it's not meant for the tracks. So in that sense, you need to limit your expectations when you're going to be leaned over, when you're going to be carving corners. And in that sense, yes, you can feel a little bit of suppleness, a little bit of lack of sharpness as compared to some other motorcycles which are sharper, more expensive, are more track focused. But to be completely honest, for our road conditions and for what this motorcycle sets out to do, I really believe it would be a travesty if you want to fault this motorcycle for its handling. It doesn't have the most expensive bits in the form of the suspension or the brakes or even the chassis, but I really believe that Triumph have done a fantastic job by putting together everything very, very beautifully, setting up everything very, very beautifully, and whatever is there on this motorcycle works very, very well from a versatility perspective. And be it on the highway, on a straight road, around a set of bends, on a canyon, everywhere this motorcycle is going to satisfy you. Of course, this motorcycle is not meant to be going off the road, so the moment you take it off the road, it's not going to perform well. So that's one limitation, of course, but as long as you keep it on the tar, this motorcycle is going to delight you, especially with the limitation in its power. It really can be taken to its limit and you are going to enjoy this in a variety of conditions. Sure, if you're a seasoned rider, you might find the performance a little bit limiting, but I really believe that for the vast majority of the motorcycle buyers who are going to be entering this segment, this motorcycle is going to be their friend for a very, very long time. So who is this motorcycle for? Well, a whole bunch of youngsters who are probably graduating from the likes of the KTM 390, maybe the Royal Enfield Twins, the Dominar and RR 310, and are looking for something which really packs in a punch in the true sense, something which really pushes the limits in our kind of a scenario. This motorcycle is probably a properly international product, a high quality product at the right price, and it looks amazing. It looks really, really beautiful. It's available in 4 colors, and it really is the right package for such a requirement. It can take you to your work. It can be a commuter machine without a doubt. It really has a tractability, the best tractability I've seen on such kind of a motorcycle. It can be a very good highway machine. It can carve the corners for you. Long distance touring, it is capable of doing that, but it's not a motorcycle cut out for that job. So if you are planning to do that sort of a thing, you probably should not be looking here. You should be looking elsewhere. But for most part, for your daily commute machine and for your weekend getaways, for the odd long trip once in a while, this motorcycle is going to fit the bill. Not meant for someone who has a requirement for a long seat, a comfortable pillion seat. So that is one limitation here. The ground clearance is a bit of a limitation. So if you are going to be using this motorcycle off the road or on bad speed bumps, that is going to be a bit of a problem. Heat can be an issue if it's very hot and if you're in stop-start traffic for long durations, but for the most part, it's not bothersome. But for everything else, it's one of the best middleweights that I have tested, and I really believe that this is one of the friendliest, the most likable, and one of the most easygoing motorcycles you're going to find anywhere. Not just that, it's also one of the most cost-effective, the most economical machines. And if you compare it with the likes of, say, the CB 650R, you are going to save a ton of money, about 2 lakh rupees on the ex-showroom price. It's lighter than the Z650, it's lighter than the CB 650R. It has slightly less power than the CB 650R at 81 PS. CB has about 86 PS, so it has 5 PS less, but it has about 8 Newton meters of torque, which I really believe in our conditions is a better bet to have, and I really believe this motorcycle has better character. And it's significantly lighter, about 17 kgs lighter than the CB 650R. Now on the other end of the spectrum, you have the Kawasaki Z650, where you have a cylinder less, about 13 PS less power, and also that motorcycle doesn't quite have the character this motorcycle has, nor does it have the visual drama this motorcycle has. I really believe that this motorcycle has a lot more character than the Z650, and in my eyes, this is definitely a more solid product. So if you're looking for a really balanced middleweight, something which is really, really friendly, I really believe that the Trident has to be tested out. And if you're looking in this segment, you cannot make a buying decision unless you have tested this motorcycle out. I really hope that I was able to answer all your questions about the Triumph Trident in the Indian context. Still, if you have any other questions left, feel free to put your questions in the comments section. I'll be very happy to answer all your questions. And if you like our long format detailed videos, do hit the like button. Always put Motoroids in your searches. Press that bell icon and don't forget subscribing to Motoroids. Until next time then, this is Amit Changani signing off. Rev hard, rev free, and ride safe.